Experience the future of packaging and processing up close and in action. Explore groundbreaking innovations, engage with hands-on solutions, and connect with the experts transforming the industry. See how these advancements can revolutionize your products, production lines, and business. It all starts here. Don't miss out. Register today at packexpolasvegas.com/unpackedpod. You're listening to Unpacked with PMMI, where we share the latest packaging and processing industry insights, research, and innovations to help you advance your business. Hi, and welcome to PMMI's very first Unpacked podcast. I'm Sean Riley, Senior Director of Media and Industry Communications for PMMI, and I'm very excited to be your host on PMMI's latest avenue for sharing our resources with the industry. Today, I'm speaking with Donna Ritson, President of DDR Communications. Donna often collaborates with PMMI for our business intelligence and global marketing reports, including our recent Robotics Innovation to Implementation report. Donna will share some key findings and insights from that report. Donna, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi, Sean, and hi, audience. It's great to be here with you today. We've been working with PMMI now for about 12 years, and as Sean said, we are the author of the Robotics report that just came out this year. We've also worked on the automation report, which was a big report in 2018, so we're excited, too, to share some of the findings.
Fantastic. Without further ado, then, I guess it's time for Robotics with Riley and Ritson. I like that. We should probably trademark that before someone tries to steal it. Okay, so robotics has been in and around manufacturing for years, but it's always felt like something that will happen versus something that is happening on a widespread level, at least in my opinion. Now it seems like it is beginning to fully arrive as a force in manufacturing. Donna, what do you see what are the key drivers that are speeding up this evolution to where it's no longer an evolution, but kind of a full-fledged revolution?
Well, there are several factors, actually, Sean, that are really driving this. And one of the key factors that we hear about across all industries is this shortage of skilled labor. And not just skilled labor, but really finding people, workers in general, to do the tasks that are required in manufacturing. So that's really one of the key drivers that is really facilitating robotics and cobots to be implemented more widely across processing and packaging. But it's really not just to replace labor, as we hear some of the chat in the industry. It really is to be the future of robots, is to enhance the worker and have a greater level of productivity in their work cells to be able to have more output out the door. And also, another thing that's really driving this robotics is the SKU proliferation that we hear about. We see that on our consumer shelves every day. New products, new flavors, new packaging, new sizes. It's all causing shorter runs in the manufacturing site, and that's challenging for the production line. So companies are really looking for robots, and in instances growing, as we know, cobots. So the goal really is to increase throughput. And we heard from interviews in this research that we did, some of the small and medium-sized companies might get an order that doubles the size of their opportunity, and they don't have the workers to be able to do that. So they are turning to robots and cobots to help automate their processes and be able to grow and meet some of these demands that are being placed on new product companies. And certainly to drive down costs. Robots are being looked at ultimately that it will reduce the manufacturing costs. So robots are growing across all size companies, not just our large CPG manufacturers, but medium and small companies, as I just mentioned. And it's certainly opening up new partnerships. We talked to people who were looking to collaborate with existing customers and reaching out to new customers, forming relationships with their suppliers, um, really looking for those partners who can engage and help them move from a manual process into a more automated process, and certainly into this digital world of data collection and artificial intelligence, as we'll continue to refer to as AI.
Okay, now when you say cobots, for people that are listening who might not be familiar with the term, what do you mean? What's the difference between a
Well,
traditional
from some
robot
of the
and a
things that
cobot?
we heard, Sean, it they think there's really a not a huge distinction. A cobot is just being coined as something that is smaller, lower cost, um, more easy to manage. So think of a robot that would be doing a pick and place operation, smaller operation versus a large automated robot that might be doing case packing and palletizing. So the difference really is somewhat of a perception in the industry of the difference between a robot and a cobot.
Okay. So not necessarily in the huge cages, isolated away from everybody on the manufacturing floor. They could kind of be in line, and workers could actually be near them and be, for lack of a better word, safe, because the size isn't
Yes,
as
that's
as
true. And
large,
also,
basically.
cobots are really being looked at as being a collaborative robot, hence the word cobot, um, because it will be safer. It will be able to have intuitive thinking and understand that it is in an environment with a human. And if it comes in contact with something, it will be able to stop its task that it's doing, go into more of a safe mode while that obstacle might be in its way, and then resume its operation. So it's really all a software driven. You could make large robots have the same thing. It's just the force that it might take and the time it might take for them to stop their operation. That's why they're caged and they're guarded so that humans don't walk into those environments.
Okay, so that's probably also some of the
Absolutely,
artificial
yes.
intelligence that we're going to talk about, later. Okay. And my just another thing before we move off of this. There was always this belief or myth that the robots were going to come in and replace workers. But from what you're saying, it sounds like A, there's not enough workers, and B, they're not going to replace
Well,
them,
I
but
think it's
maybe
all of
enhance
the
them.
above, Sean. Certainly, we can't
Okay,
deny that robots are going to take away jobs, but they're jobs that are hard to fill right now. So that's the chicken or the egg, which comes
right.
first? We can't find the workers, so we put in robots, or do we put in robots because we can't find the workers? I think it's one and the same. Um, they're really the technology that is driving this is to make all of us as the human workers smarter and available for tasks that are higher level that a robot can perform endlessly day after day.
Fair enough. And then that would open up opportunities for the workers that are already there to do, things that would take advantage of their talents a little bit
Exactly.
more than just pick and place type things. Fair enough. Okay. So then, with the use of robotics increasing, in the last 5 years or so, and it's expanding across the entire manufacturing lines, what specific advancements, and we've touched on some already, in robotic technology, do you think are going to continue to emerge as robotics
That's really a
continues to take
broad
hold?
topic, but I'll do some summary on this. In general,
Okay.
robots are going to be easier to use. They're going to operate more like our smartphone, so that it's intuitive. Programming, we already know, is becoming easier. It's becoming more configurable. Um, there's certainly more open source operating systems now that are also emerging. So in essence, what will happen with robots in the future is we'll tell them what to do instead of telling them how to do it. So that really leads into
Wow.
the artificial intelligence AI, and where that impact is really going to be is with the robots and their capability of learning. They'll be able to learn um, during their day-to-day tasks, so we won't necessarily tell the robot how to do this task. It will figure that out itself by the task that it's doing. AI will make robots safer, as we just talked about. Certainly, they'll be uncaged and collaborative in a workstation with humans. Um, that's because, as we talk, they'll be more aware of their surroundings. They'll have sensors where they can understand what's in their environment. All that being data-driven technology. So robots of the future will truly be self-learning. They'll be able to adapt to their surroundings. They'll be able to do corrective action in real time. And a lot of this is going to be driven by the coming of the 5G infrastructure wireless networks. Some areas already have this 5G. It's certainly emerging, and it will be a game changer in terms of how fast data will be exchanged in the whole digital world. Robots, to be able to have that adaptive corrective action, are going to have instantaneous feedback, and 5G is going to drive that. So that's really going to make robots more intelligent, truly the smart robot that we all keep hearing about. So that digital data, the sensors, and all the other data points that it will collect, that feeds into some complex algorithms. That's really what powers AI, and that's really what powers machine learning. And these advancements will help improve production, they'll improve output, they'll improve efficiencies, they'll improve OEE, and ultimately all to reduce costs. Some of the other things that robots will be able to accomplish, they're going to be more perceptive. There's advancements in 3D vision and color cameras where a robot is going to be able to, can now, actually, not going to be, but can now recognize and decipher objects much more quickly, much more accurately. They'll be able to, with greater precision, look at a tray of something that they're picking and putting in another place, or they're picking and they're boxing. They'll be able to look at patterns and colors and shapes and sizes and be able to react to what's in front of them in a highly intelligent way. Some of the other things, that the end of arm tooling is significantly continuing to advance. Like I said, it's going to be able to have the capability for more complex picking and assembly tasks, and pack patterns, and case pack patterns, and palletizing patterns, and mixed pallets. It's just going to have that capability of being fed that data and what it's supposed to be doing. So robots certainly are finding applications across all processing and packaging operations. We heard it all the way from the front of the line to the end of the line, and we know that palletizing is particularly where robots started. But through the years that we've been researching this, through the automation report and robots, and even the whole manufacturing line in itself, robots are moving up the line. There's applications now because they're more hygienic, they're mobile. Robots will be more autonomous in the future. They'll be able to move from one task to the next. So it's going to be a holistic view of manufacturing where, as I said, robotics started at the end of the line. It's now going to be integrated into the entire line.
When you say, so you said hygienic, and I want, before I lost that. So you're basically, based off of the research and from what you've been hearing, that would bring, which I from what I understand was kind of an area that robots weren't used in that much, but that would bring them into play for food and beverage and things like that, where they can be around things that in the past you kind of associated robots with, like you said, end of line things, boxing at the end, cartoning, or working with maybe in the automotive industry with those type of things. But it sounds like, as you're saying, as it gets more hygienic, you're getting more into, you know, the large scale food and beverage and produce and even pharmaceuticals and things like that. Is that basically
Yes, Sean,
either
you're
where
right
we
on,
are or where we're
and
headed?
it's
For the first time, PMMI members and Pack Expo exhibitors can gain a true insight into the competitive marketing landscape within the packaging and processing industries. See real data from PMMI Media Group campaigns on engagement from validated, verified end users, including the amount of captured leads and even how Pack Expo booth visits align with pre-show marketing. You'll also get a full view of campaign strategies in market across all 12 months for competitors in your product category with variations by channel. This kind of intel has never been available before. Request your custom competitive analysis report now at pmmi.media/CAR. That's pmmi.media/CAR.
kind of where we are and where we're headed, because it's only going to continue to advance. There is approval for end of arm tooling to have direct food contact now. So the hygienic aspect of it has certainly opened up a lot of avenues in markets, personal care, like you said, food and beverage and pharmaceutical, and even some of the delicate assembly and electronics, and definitely has opened up new avenues for robotic usage.
Terrific. Okay. Earlier, I kind of alluded to, how it, at least in my, years in this industry, it's always seemed like robotics was kind of just outside, for lack of a better word, mainstream manufacturing. It was always, I mentioned automotive before, but it always seemed to be something either end of line or for the huge companies to use. It was something that was always talked about, but the years would go on and it would never actually be something that you would go into a plant and see every time, whether it was because of price, the complexity of the technologies, things like that. Now that it has kind of taken root, are there hurdles that end users are dealing with that still might hinder this implementation of robots? Are they lessening?
Certainly.
Could you talk about that a little bit?
I'll kind of even backtrack on a little bit of what you just talked about. Um, a lot of the companies that we did speak with in this robotics report were some of our larger CPGs, and they all are well ingrained in robotics. But we also talked to small and medium-sized companies, as I mentioned earlier, and we're starting to see some significant adoption in those size companies as well. And the biggest hurdle that we heard about was this cost justification and ROI. But we also heard companies talk about they don't have the internal expertise they don't feel they have the internal expertise. And I think that's where a lot of the collaboration is being done in the industry, is to form these partnerships. And it's just not one or two, it's several partners who will help these companies gain that expertise. And the other thing we heard asked about significantly was help us find, I'm speaking as an end user, help us find the right application.
Mm-hmm.
Come in and look at our process. Where are we and where should we be looking at a robotic implementation? I'll mention here about the ROI particularly, because that really was the number one challenge that companies talked about. So in our interviews, we explored, well, what formula, what criteria, or what manufacturing variables are you including in your ROI? And Sean, we got a really long list. So that tells me that is a stumbling point that is solvable if we help determine what the ROI formula should look like. Companies are saying we're experiencing ROI
Right.
in less than 6 months. That's pretty impressive. So at Pack Expo this
Sure.
year, there's a new forum that is taking place, and it'll be about many different subjects. Um, but it'll be peers coming together and talking about their experiences and exchanging their knowledge and helping each other determine and work through some of the issues that they all face. And one of those forums will be on robotics and ROI. So for our listeners out there who are facing this, that will be on Monday at 3:30 at Pack Expo Vegas in September.
So that's awesome. So that's going to give people the opportunity to discuss with people that have either implemented robots already or the manufacturers, excuse me, of the robots. Ways. First of all, how the quickly they might be able to find a return on investment, but also ways to, because I'm assuming one of the big problems is in the plant or on the manufacturing floor, there might be people that see the benefits of these robots, but then they have to go back and it has to run up, the food chain upstairs, and all they see is this initial cost and this, line item that it'd be much easier to say no to than to yes. So this would give the opportunity for people to come back with a way of saying, look how quickly we can, whether it's taking, money that we'd have to spend on wages or stuff like that, that has to all be
That's
incorporated
true,
into the return
and
on investment for
there's a
robotics.
pretty long list that we heard from. So there were some commonalities that came out, and we won't get into too much of that detail right now. But one of the other things that you touched on was running this up the chain of command, and we did hear some companies talk about that. There's a real fear of robotic intimidation. Um, in terms of do we need one, do we really have to go there,
Hmm.
if things are working now and they're just fine, why should we make any changes? And that's an interesting concept, but really it's moving into this digital age of decision making and higher learning that robotics is really taking us into.
So do you think that's just like a slippery slope type thing where they're afraid to get into it because once we're in it, you're kind of committed to it going forward, or it's just an old way of thinking? Like what do you what do you feel based off of what you know
Well,
that
I think it goes back
that
to
is
one of the
kind of the driver
key
to that?
hurdles that we heard about, and that's the lack of internal expertise. There's always an intimidation for all of us in anything that we have to encounter that's new and unfamiliar. You have a tendency to go,
Right.
no, I think I'll wait. And so I think that lack of internal expertise is an area that is, it definitely is causing a let's take a second look at this and make sure we're ready to do this.
Fair enough. Okay, so we've hit on a bunch of topics in robotics, and as someone who has researched robotics as you have, kind of inside and out, I was hoping we could kind of leave our listeners with some, actionable directives, basically a few takeaways that at the end of this, after listening, they can, think about ways that'll help them incorporate robots back into their business. So is there any, three, four, couple things off the top of your head that you could think of that, they can
Absolutely.
use as
In this
takeaways?
in this robotic era right now, there's many things that are taking place. Couple of the things to really look at, though, to help your customers or your new customers identify where robotic applications can be added and be beneficial is, look at the root cause of where production loss is occurring. Where will adding robotics have the greatest impact? Where are bottlenecks in their manufacturing line where they could allocate resources and prioritize energy towards, and robotics adding that then could certainly help them improve their productivity, and really, as we just heard, help them realize their cost on the investment. I think another thing to look at in terms of an actionable directive is you really need to have a long-term vision with all parties involved. CPG companies, we heard over and over again, they're wanting to form partnerships. I know that kind of gets to be a cliche, the whole collaboration and partnerships, but it really is what is needed in this era of technology. They're really looking for suppliers to help them walk through this process of identifying where can a robot be, how do we design it, help us commission it and install it, and help us find where those solutions could be. And that in itself is a tall order. But with robotics, another thing to keep in mind is service expectations increase. So having the capability to service these robots, we heard again from the end users and the CPGs that we spoke with, they really want their suppliers to come in, help them identify, implement the process, train them, obviously, and takes a little bit different training on a robot, and stick with them through till the end. Literally, we heard a lot of comments about hand holding, hold our hand through this process until that robot achieves the production that it's supposed to achieve.
And I guess, as always, that comes down to who's going to pay for it, right?
Absolutely. Cost is we always say cost is the bottom line. Actually, cost is at the top of the list. So that's kind of a given because there's no infinite budget. But something that we did pull out of the report that was interesting is we always ask about the spending level. Do you intend to continue to spend capital funding on new technology and particularly robotics? And yes, we hear that consistently in every report that we do for PMMI. The money is available if we can justify the outcome. So one of the things that I think we want to leave our listeners with is robots and humans will work together. Robots and humans will live together. It's happening now. We're in the midst of it. So it's an exciting time because we are in the midst of this. It's not something that's coming and being talked about. It's not in the past and it's already done. We're literally the workforce and the generation of professionals that will make these changes happen. And if we look at commercials, which, okay, I agree, most people just fast forward through commercials. But what's interesting is start to notice robots in all of our commercials, whether it's at work or play or in your house or out and about in the world. We're being shown, whether subliminally or boldly, how we will live with robots in the future. And I think to leave the listeners with a thought, we talked to one of the leading robot manufacturers, and their prediction in the industry is that robots will double in the next 10 years. And that's 10 years in our professional lives. So we're going to see some incredible change in both our professional and our personal lives with robots.
Thanks, Donna. That's perfect, and is just the type of information that should raise a bit of a red flag for any of our listeners who aren't currently involved with robots. At this point, robotics aren't something that will put you ahead of the curve. They're really something your operation needs just to keep pace with your competition. With this in mind, PAC Expo Las Vegas is debuting the Robotics Zone this year. It's going to show a series of ways that robots are being employed, with actual robots completing actual tasks right on the show floor. There'll be a pick and place and relocation robots in action, artificial intelligence, cobots, working with humans, plus a little Vegas flair thrown in with a all-robot band and interactive dice-playing robots. There's also Pack for a Purpose, which is going to combine robotic resources with the Blessings in a Backpack charity, and they help provide food for hungry children who aren't sure if they're going to have something to eat on the weekends. So these robots are going to pack food in the containers that are then going to go into backpacks to help these kids. So these are just some of the experiences that Pack Expo Las Vegas is bringing to the Robotics Zone. So be sure to stop by while you're at the show, September 23rd to 25th at the Las Vegas Convention Center. Obviously, Donna just touched on the ways robots are thriving. There is much more to learn about robotics, specifically where on the line robot installations continue to thrive, which you'll read about in the full PMMI report. We encourage you to download the executive summary or the full report, Robotics, Innovation to Implementation, at pmmi.org/research. Thanks for listening to Unpacked with PMMI. Be sure to join us next time for more packaging and processing industry insights. Please rate, review, and subscribe. To do that, go to the iTunes podcast or Spotify app on your phone and search for Unpacked with PMMI.